Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host, Brett
Gilliland. Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Glow Accelerator Podcast. How is your day going so far?
It's going great. It's it's going well. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am so happy to have you here. Thanks for coming on, because I was on your podcast about a month ago, which seems like forever ago now.
It does.
And so I am excited to actually be on the other side of it and interview you. So tell my audience a little bit about you and your background and what we need to know.
Yeah. So, married, 4 kids. I've got, I got high school kids. I've got junior high. I've got elementary. So I'm kind of got it all there. We'll be in college next year. So we'll have them all next year. But so that keeps me very busy. My wife and I are, busy with our community, obviously our work and our kids. I grew up in a small town in central Illinois called Mattoon, Illinois. And went to Eastern Illinois University and got into the financial services industry immediately. And this is all I've ever done. And so I love working with our clients, our advisors, and just really helping them achieve a future greater than your past. That's the mission of our firm and a personal mission of mine. And so we're just excited to help people do that every day.
I absolutely love that. And I think that's really what fascinates me with your work, is that, you are in this wealth management space, but you have this context where you're like, no matter what your past is, let's create a future that's greater than that. So give us a little bit of background on, on that statement, on that motto that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things, and people always want to have a mission and a purpose, I think, in life, and it's hard, right? It doesn't just click day one and that's your mission for the rest of your life. And so I think for people listening, if you say, gosh, I don't have a mission statement or this thing that drives me every day, I think keep challenging yourself. And so for us, it was just, there's constantly been a mission statement in my life. And for the last probably 10 years, this has been the one that I have officially finally found, so it took me 10 or 12 years of being in the professional business before I found one that really clicked, and it clicks for our firm, it clicks for our advisors, our clients. And, I ask a question all the time is how many people want a future that's greater than your past, and everybody would raise their hand. And it doesn't mean that your past is bad. Some maybe it is, but most aren't, right? We're lucky and blessed. And so, but I think at the end of the day, people still want a future that's greater than their past. And so it's a mission that I think it's easy to rally around when we're talking to people and just diving deep and finding out what's important to you today. Where do you want to be at, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years and beyond, and really, really focusing on that stuff. And what I've found in my career is that clarity precedes mastery. And so the more clarity I have on where I'm going, personally, professionally, financially, emotionally, spiritually, all those things, the more clarity I have on that, there's a much greater likelihood that I'm going to get there.
So good. To kind of go back to what you said earlier about, this future and having a vision, one of the things that I love to talk to my clients about is something called post-traumatic growth. And one of the exercises, and the reason I appreciate you saying this, is that one of the exercises we do is we have to revisit the past and look at what's the way you're telling the story of your past, right? And as you said, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you had a bad past, you can have a great future, but the way that we tell that past is going to influence how we get past current blocks and how we get past, whatever obstacle comes our way as we are trying to create this new future. So I know you interview a lot of people on your podcast. I absolutely love your podcast.
Thank you.
What have you learned? What have you learned from some of these people on this kind of topic?
Yeah, if I can, I'm going to share a personal story first if I can, but then I'll share some
Oh,
stories from
absolutely.
people I've interviewed. And so you called it post-traumatic, what was it?
Growth, post-traumatic
Post-traumatic
growth.
growth. And I love that. I'm going to write that down. But I think immediately where my mind went there was back when I was a brand new advisor. So I started in the business in 2001, but 2002 was my first full year of being a financial advisor here in St. Louis. And the firm I was at the time, I was the financial advisor like of the year, the first year guy, did the, for the new guys and gals doing this business. And so I was that financial advisor of the year. And here I found myself speaking, at a really nice hotel, and I'm on stage and I'm this 23-year-old, kid who looks like I'm 12 at the time. And I'm speaking to a room full of all these experienced financial advisors. And it's like, I thought that once I got to that level, once this goal happened, all the bells and whistles were going to start going off. The confetti would fly from the ceiling, and I had made it, right? And what I found is that I didn't make it per se. And it was one year. And then what I found was that following year, 2003, was my most challenging year at that time, ever in my life. And I was a terrible financial advisor my second year in the business. And by terrible wasn't mean I was a terrible financial advisor. I was terrible at getting clients. And so when you're new and you got to build your business, that's how they kind of rank you, right? How are you going to get your clients? And I did a terrible job. And so I kind of got this confidence and arrogance, if you will, around, I got this figured out. I'm this young guy and I got it going. Well, reality is I didn't work hard. I didn't know what work ethic was, and I didn't know how to go out and make connections and meet people and do those things. But I think that's, to your point, post-traumatic growth is I thought I was going to get there, but after the fact, I had a lot of learning to do. And while that 2003 year was not fun, it was probably the most personal growth I've ever had in my career, even to this date. And that's after starting, Visionary Wealth Advisors, where we're at now, and doing that for the last 10 years. There's been a lot of growth and a lot of learning. But that learning to work, learning to put one foot in front of the other, learning to take rejection and show up every day, whether you want to or not, I had to learn that. And thankfully, I learned it at 23, 24 years old. So that was the first thing that came to my mind was when that happened. And it was a great learning year for me.
Yeah, that is so fascinating, right? And for you to have done that so young. I know when I was that age, I definitely, I wish I would have paused when I was 23 to say, holy cow, I should probably go build something instead of partying.
Right.
So it always fascinates me when people do things like that very young, because, technically at 23 years old, your prefrontal cortex isn't even developed yet, right? So especially for boys, it takes a little bit longer, I think like 26, 27. So it's really fascinating that you were able to put yourself out there and have this growth mindset to say, oh, wait a second, things aren't going the way that we want them. And I think for a lot of people, this is kind of where they stop, and they think that it should be easy, and that this vision that we have in our brain, if it doesn't happen, all of a sudden we're like, oh, something has gone wrong. Something is either wrong with me, or there's something wrong with the situation, and I'm just going to freeze, right? So I love to hear that you were able to pull through that.
Yeah, and I think too is that back to that clarity precedes mastery, is I was really clear on what my goals were, the things I wanted. Now they were more superficial then, right? It was like, oh, I want to have season tickets to the Cardinal game, and I want to have this, and I want to do that. Well, I knew my first year I was on track and gonna be able to do those things in my life. And then when you want something bad enough, no matter what it is, and then it's taken away from you, and there's no way, if I would have continued down the path that I was on that second year, I was never going to get the things that I wanted to have in my life. And so I still, this day, I've got 2 journals in front of me right now. I write down all my goals, my dreams, my aspirations, and these are things that I want. And there's lots of reasons and meanings behind why I want that. And so that was important to me. And it was so ingrained in me that I wanted it bad enough that I knew I couldn't ever accomplish it by doing what I was doing. So I had to make a change.
I love that you bring this up, that like back then things for you were superficial and you wanted the Cardinals game tickets and all the materialistic things. And so I want to kind of speak to that, because for my clients who, I see this, there are some of them that are wanting these tangible materialistic goals, which is totally okay. And I coach them on this as well. It's like, it's okay with your level of development. You might have different wants and needs, but we both know that the more you like sort of move up that level, the more your goals change. And I don't know if you found that with yourself and how have things shifted for you.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at I've kept all my business plans for years. And so, they're right down the hall. I could go back and you could see my goals and dreams for when I was 24, 25, 28, 30 years old, right? Now at 45, here they all are, and they have changed. They've changed a lot, and it's become less about, because I didn't have kids then, right? And I think kids for me changed a lot. And do I want nice things? Absolutely. I want to have a nice home and do nice things? Yes, of course I do. But it's so I don't want to paint a picture like, oh, I don't want that stuff. I still want the nice things. But I think now it's more about, time. It's more about experiences. It's creating memories. Those are the things that I focus on now versus, getting the tickets to the Cardinals. I mean, you can go do that now, thankfully, right? But now it's more about the experience. And especially as our, kids are getting the age now where one of them, a year from today would be in his first month of college and maybe, away from home. And so those are the things I think about now and how they change is creating experiences.
Yeah, I love that. And just going deeper into the day-to-day and experiences and spending time with loved ones. And so as you're talking about clarity and the journaling piece, I actually just a couple of weeks ago had someone on who we talked the entire podcast on journaling. But I would love to hear your perspective on what are the benefits for you to journal every day? And what are some of the questions that you journal on? Because I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on. Especially with the future journaling.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked back at these and you can, you can't see them. They're back over here. I've got them since July of 2005. I've had the same, it's a different journal, but the same kind. And I mean, there's all sorts of questions that I would ask myself. And I've got my journal for my day-to-day stuff over here that I've created. And then I've got my journal over here that's just blank pieces of paper that I ask myself questions. And what I find is, I'll be thinking about something, whether I'm laying in bed and going to bed at night, or if I'm driving down the road, and I'll pick up the phone and ask Siri, what I need to be reminded of. And so I do my strategic think time on Wednesdays, which happens to be today. So from 1 to 2:30 today, I will spend an hour and a half in this journal and I will just think. And so what those things are, they're in here and they've been in here for a week now. So there's some of them I've probably already forgotten what they are. But you think about us as humans, we drive around, we exercise, we think, we do whatever. You think about it in the middle of the night, have a notepad or a phone or something by you to write down the questions and then spend time thinking on that. And so whether it's things that I need to do better as a leader, things I need to do better as a spouse or a husband or, or as a father, things I want to do. What's the next experience I want to create? What are things going well right now? What do I need to start, stop, and continue? And I love that one, right? So what do I need to start doing better? What do I need to stop doing right now that's going on in my life? And what should I continue doing? And so, for me, when I do that, then I can go out and create a plan around it. So if I'm in a slump on something, I immediately go to this journal. I write down what the slump is and how I'm going to get myself out of it. And I talk about no pity parties, so we can have a pity party. We can be mad and upset about something. But what I have found is the most successful people I've been around throughout my career and now having the luxury to interview it's what I call the bounce back theory. The faster or the more successful they are, the faster they bounce back from rejection or defeat, right? So instead of just sitting there and having this pity party, let's go write it down and figure out how you're going to dig yourself out of this hole and go make things happen.
That is so, so good. Yeah, it's in this idea of conscious leadership. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about, all the clients I've had and all the people I've talked to about conscious leadership. One of the key traits is being aware of your ego structure, your character structure, and your coping mechanisms. And, what are your triggers? And, when do you feel like you're shut down because you were rejected? And so what I'm hearing you say is, that is one of the ways that you are able to shine light on what's actually going on in your ego structure, what is actually going on in your day-to-day, because it's so easy to miss. Like in this human experience, it goes fast. I mean, and I feel like that the older I get, the faster time goes because it's like
Yeah.
you have your routines, you have the things you do, and then next thing you wake up and you're like, what the hell just happened? It's September
Right.
27th. Where is the year gone?
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like with the journaling and the way that you're describing it is like you have intentionality behind it, behind what is going on and what you want to do with that information.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt. And I actually, this is a self promotion here. I apologize, but I created this achieving a future greater than your past. And one of the things that's important for me in here is, can't really see this, but it says weekly scorecard and Sunday planning. And so every week I've got my Monday through Friday. And then on the weekend, on Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, I go through in a weekly scorecard. So what did I just learn? What were my weekly victories professionally? What were my family experiences? What were my gratitude connections? What was my biggest awareness from the week? Right? These are things I'm doing every Sunday. And then I take my week ahead and then I plan for it. And so what I found is a lot of people have anxiousness on Sunday, right? The week ahead and what's coming and what's happening. And so what I do is I go in and for me, there's something about writing something down on a piece of paper, kind of brain tattoos into my mind, right? And I will go through on Monday and write down every single meeting. And so last week, when I went through my Sunday planning, I know that I was going to be on your podcast right here. It says podcast Wednesday. I wrote it down and I was picturing the Riverside look and the feel. And I was already in this meeting on Sunday. So now when I'm here, 3 or 4 days later, I've been here. I've been in this meeting. And what I found for me is it created more clarity and less anxiety for my week. So then I, better sleep, it's excitement. I'm ready to go. I'm prepared. And then I know exactly what I want to get out of each meeting.
That's so good. So the visualization part of like, you're actually sat there and you envision this entire scenario so that you can prepare. It's like practicing in your brain.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about visualization. I mean, I know athletes do it. I know musicians do it. I know anyone who is a high performer that I've talked to has some sort of practice where they visualize. What have you found? Do you feel like that's true?
I do, and I've had things for years that again you can go back and I've got them, even some of them saved right here. These are things that I have written to myself and the things that I want to do in my life. And this was one back in 2007. I wrote this one in January of 2017, and it's everything that I am. I wrote my I am statements, and I signed it. And those things for me, it's all beat up and got water stains on it. But it's like, for me, like that visualization is something I need. I think we live in a very negative world right now, and our phones and all the notifications and news and all the stuff that's out there. I think if you continue to listen to that stuff, you're going to feel bad. If you continue to tell yourself the things that you want to be and who you are, then you're going to be that person, right? So I try to eliminate all the negative stuff from my life. I don't have all the notifications go off on my phone. I don't watch television to the point of, news and all that stuff. I watch what I need to watch for my industry, of course, to stay up on the latest and greatest stuff going on, but I don't watch that stuff. And so for me, it's like, how do I outthink, outwork the competition? And that's what I want to do every single day. And then how do I be there and be present for my wife and my kids and do those things? And if I can do that day in and day out and visualize that by a statement that I read to myself, then that's what's helped me over my career.
Yeah, that reminds me of the statement, what we focus on, we create, right? If you focus on all the negative things that are going on, especially the news, and especially, I joke, I only watch the news when I go get my nails done because that's what's blasting. And I swear to you, every time I walk out of there, I'm like, the world is ending. I'm like, I think I missed things because what is going on? So my husband and I, we just don't watch the news. And there are certain sources that we will turn on if we need to, or we will hear it from friends, or if there's anything that needs to go on, we need to know. So I love that concept of like, what is it that you want to create, and focus on that, especially in this world of constant communication. And so as I'm thinking about all of this, I'm thinking about, you are someone, and I don't think I've ever had anyone on this podcast that has sort of this like wealth management, finance background. And I, do want to offer my audience a perspective of, if there's someone, and myself being a child of immigrant parents, refugees.
Right.
We never had much, right? And so, if there's anyone in my audience that's sort of listening to this and thinking, I've always had this goal that I want to be wealthy. And even though I don't really know, I've never seen or had anyone in my family that was wealthy. And so for me, the more I'm learning about myself and the more I'm learning about creating wealth for myself, I'm also realizing that, yes, it's not just the money, it's also emotional wealth. It's physical, wealth, physical health. What would you recommend to someone, as we're talking about mental blocks, what do you see people who have not had anything or have not had much and people who have succeeded? What is it that they do differently? What are the blocks that they have to get through in order to create money and wealth?
Yeah, and not to keep saying the same thing, but it's clarity, right? I mean, the people we've worked with, and I've been doing this for 22 years, and I've seen people with no money create money, and I've seen people with ungodly amounts of money continue to grow it, right? So, I mean, I've seen the whole spectrum, and I've seen people that have come into money quickly that it doesn't work out well, right? And, through challenge, and but you got to have that person in your world that helps you. But, if I'm not in that person's world or somebody like me, then I think one, it's clarity. And so what does wealth mean to you, right? What does money mean to you? And I pause there because it's important. I think the listener needs to think about that. So my question, whether we role play this or you just we walk through it, but I always ask, what's important about money to you? Right.
Yeah.
And then whatever their answer is, then, what's that next step? What's important about that to you? And it's usually 5 or 6 layers deeper than that. I think, it's what's important about money to you. Well, I want to be able to pay my bills. Okay. Well, what's important about paying your bills? Well, I don't want to go not be able to pay my bills and lose my house. So what's so important to you about not losing your home? And so now it may go back to, I was an immigrant child who didn't have anything, right? It may come to that. And then why that's so clear to you, then we're going to set goals and dreams and aspirations around why that's so important to you. That's the real issue. You don't just want to be wealthy. You don't want to be broke, right? You don't want to have nothing. And so if you don't want that, then what are the parameters we're going to set up in our lives today that can help you get from point A to point Z? And it's not going to happen overnight, And so it's just like, if I go out and do 3 curls with my left arm's not going to be bigger than my right arm. Well, if I save $1 today, I'm not going to be rich tomorrow. And so those are the things that we really help people with, is finding out what's important about money, what's important about wealth. But then I also ask, how do you define success? Because my definition of success and your definition could be totally different things. And I think where our world needs help is we focus success primarily financially. And I don't believe that. I believe it's your faith, it's your family, it's your fitness, right? It's your work, it's your fun, it's definitely your finances. There's no doubt about it. But those are the 6 F's that I talk about that are important to people. And then how do we make that life work? So then the last comment I would make, and I'll be quiet, but is, what is your ideal life? And so how many people have an ideal life written down, like when they wake up and when they go to bed, and then everything in between? What are you wanting to do hour on the hour, every hour? What does your ideal life look like? So now if I know your ideal life, I know your definition of success, I know your definition of wealth and why money is important to you, now we can help you get where you want to go.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. It's the pausing and thinking about it and asking the whys, and I do that exercise with some of my clients of like, ask why 5 times. Like, why do you want that? Why do you want that? And, I do see people who don't know what they want. Like there are many times where I get into sessions with people and they'll just blank when I ask them certain questions, but because we do this exercise of, what does your external world look like in 3 years? And they'll just recite kind of what they are already doing now. And one of the things that I point out is, we can't create something different from our current mindset. Like if you want something different, you got to start thinking differently. You got to start creating in your mind new things. And so people do block themselves from, maybe envisioning this future for many different reasons. And one of the things that I've also found, and I don't know if you've seen this before, but like just worthiness. of like,
Yeah.
they think that if they have more money in their accounts, that they're more worthy, or that they're more productive, they're more worthy. And it goes back to just not feeling like they're, you know, enough or even worth what they're trying to create because of some sort of trauma or some sort of thing that they've been through. So I think breaking through those barriers is something that I'm very passionate about, and love, again, to go back to your podcast. And I think that the thing that I really appreciate about your podcast is that you bring these people on from all walks of life, it sounds like, that have made it, right? And they share their story, because for us as humans, we need to hear stories of others' success. And so would love to hear from you, you know, kind of like, what are some takeaways there that, you know, what are some things that you've heard that are important for my audience?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones I always think about is, let me ask you a question. Have you heard of Lululemon?
Absolutely, yes.
I think you probably have, right? And so when you think of Lululemon, what do you think about?
Oof, good quality workout clothes.
Yeah. So you probably also, people would think of success, this big company, this, you know, this thing, right? That's out there, and they've sold all over the world, luxury. And what people don't really understand, unless you go listen to Chip Wilson, no plug here intended, but Chip Wilson is the founder of Lululemon. He was on my podcast, and here's a guy that is uber successful, right? I mean, is off the charts successful. And when I say successful, in building a business and building wealth, right? That's what he's done very well. His personal situation, I have no idea. But he has built a very successful business. Now he's out of that business. But what people don't understand is in 1998, when he went to build Lululemon, his biggest thing is how he founded it was he had a failed surf shop. He was maybe in like a ski shop as well. He was trying to build these businesses. But his deal was, if he heard something 3 times in a week, he needed to research it. Well, here he was. He heard the word yoga 3 times in a week. This is before yoga was as big as it is now, right? And so he said, hey, I need to research this yoga thing. And then he found out that it was eventually started for women, that they needed high-end luxury clothes that were athletic wear, right? And he kind of invented an industry, if you will. And so, but again, you fast forward, what people don't understand is while he built Lululemon, is that he was about 6 days away, if I remember correctly, about 6 days away from having to shut the company down because he wasn't going to be able to make payroll. Right. And so for me, as a business owner and a leader, you hear those things. It's like, gosh, I only think of Lululemon as this big company. I don't think back to the days where Chip Wilson was grinding and on the journey like the rest of us, right? And having to fight to make payroll and do the things that you do as an early business owner. And so that was a big one for me, because then he got a commitment from a company to buy X amount of, you know, whatever it was, right? Their leggings, whatever it may be. They bought that. And then the next order came in and he was able to make payroll. And then it just started snowballing from there. And then now it's this massive brand. And so I think that's cool, right? I think that's neat to hear that somebody's 1 week away basically from not making payroll, shut the company down, and now this uber successful company. But then I think of other people that are on the podcast too. I mean, local Katie Collier was on, you know, and she, you know, dropped out of high school at 15 years old and has built this unbelievable, you know, restaurant business and brand and everything that they're doing in our community. And, you know, we had that discussion too, is that there's people that come from money that stay in money. There's people that come from nothing that get to money. There's people that come from money that end up broke, and vice versa. Right.
Yeah.
And so how do we do that? I don't know. But what I think it is, the more positive people we can be around, the more we can learn and educate ourselves. That's what's is gonna help us, and focus on the things. And what you talked about, focus, you know, we can create, but I would also say whatever we focus on expands. And so let's expand our horizons. Let's expand our thinking to being around great people. So I could go on and on for people that have been on the podcast that have amazing stories, but it's just things like that for me, that you're 1 week away from going bankrupt and you end up building this big brand. So I think it gives us all hope.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I know that as an entrepreneur, and for my husband as well, you know, we own the boxing gym. And I remember when we opened the gym, and, you know, you think you're going to open the door and everybody's just going to flood in. And you're like, well, I put the work in, I did all the things. And, you know, we spent our first day, the first open class, napping on the floor of the gym because nobody came in. And it was kind of a wake up call. It was like you on the stage at 23 thinking like, now I've arrived. And it's like, oh no, now the work began. Now we had to figure out, and then COVID happened and we had to get through that. So I can feel that. And it brought up a lot of shadow material. I talk about, in transformation, we talk about shadow material, and we think that, once we decide to do something, that's, when we've made it. And no, like, that's when things got really hard, because then you had to look at all the things that you haven't dealt with as entrepreneurs. That's part of, if you want to wake up, become an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
Because you will get rejected, you will fail, people will not come right away. And then you're going to doubt yourself, and you're going to doubt, and I don't know if you agree with this, but you're going to doubt everything you're doing probably for quite a while. And the importance is staying aligned, staying aligned and staying conscious.
I think to your point there, that for me, I call it the F word, but it's not the big F word. It's faith. And so, and it doesn't necessarily mean faith in a higher power. And that's important to me. But the other thing is just faith that what you're doing is right. Faith is the marketplace will show up when you do good work. Faith is trusting people that have gone before you. And I remember when at 27, then I became a managing director, and I owned my office, and I had to recruit and develop and train people. And the first time I took over, and my first pay run, and we had a terrible month. And I remember having to go borrow, it was like $37,000 or $47,000 to make payroll, like literally in my first 7 days. And I'm like, what in the hell have I just got myself into? Right. But then again, I go back to clarity, and I go back to my faith of, am I doing what I'm supposed to do? I've seen people that have done this and been successful. And that's when you just have to have blind faith, show up, put the work boots on, and go to work. And a buddy of mine's grandpa told us success only comes before work in the dictionary. And so for me, that was the big one, is I got to go to work and then I'll be successful. But I'm not successful, then I get to go to work. It's the other way around.
Yes, that's so good. One of my old coaches used to say, you got to create a belief plan. Before you have the do plan, you have to have the belief plan. So really going back to, what do I believe? So when things go downhill and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? I can go back to, this is what I believe. This is what the future version of me believes, and I got to stick with that.
I'm in line with that. Absolutely. The circuits of success, hence the podcast, the circuit of success, is attitude, beliefs, action equal results. And so I couldn't agree more that your belief system is critically important.
Yeah, because the layers of our identity, they go deep. And so, one of the questions that I ask people all the time is, are you willing to leave behind your old identity to become this new successful person? And sometimes we cling on to that old self because we're like, well, I don't know who that person is up there, but that's not me. I want to go there. It sounds cool. But I don't know them. And that can be scary.
But I think what you just said there is important too, right? It sounds cool, but right. I mean, that's the thing, right? Sometimes we do things because it sounds cool, but what I have found is if there's not probably 10 reasons behind why you want to do that, it's probably not going to work. If you're just doing it because it sounds cool, it's never going to work.
So good. So good. Exactly. Especially in this day and age where Instagram makes us believe we want all kinds of shit.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. And it's like, do you really? Why do you want that?
It looks cool on Instagram.
And I go,
that's why.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would love to sort of shift the conversation now towards, you're a parent, and, you've got boys that are growing up and going to college and high school. And how do you teach them about these concepts of clarity, journaling, and do they participate?
Some do and some don't. It's tough. That's the head scratcher as a dad. It's like you just want them to kind of fall in line, but everybody's their own individual and they're kids. And it's just like, I remember my dad told me when I was a kid, the books you read and the people you surround yourself with matter. And I thought to myself, well, I hate reading books, and that just means you don't like my friends, And so I didn't think about it until I was older, how right he was. He didn't not dislike my friends. It's just, it matters, man. Be careful how who you surround yourself with. So I do that. And, some of my kids will go through phases of, they've got the future greater than your past journal. And sometimes they use it all the time. And sometimes it's like, it might as well just be thrown away because they're never going to look at it again. But I hope that their mom, my wife, and I, we're putting that into them, that they know, because she thinks the same way I do, right? And it's your mindset, and it's challenging yourself, it's your effort, and we talk a lot more about effort over the results. And great, you scored a goal in that soccer game, but what I loved was your effort throughout the soccer game, and your effort to get open, and your effort, and then the risk you took to take the shot and bet on yourself, right? That's what I care about. I don't care about, I care about the goal. I want them to make the goal. I want the result. But at the end of the day, I care about your effort. And so, I talk to my kids all the time about reading 10 pages a book, 10 pages. And last night, my son, we were at a soccer game, and the one sitting next to me in the crowd is like, "Hey, Dad, guess what? I read 100 pages yesterday or today." And I'm like, "Holy smokes." I'm like, "That's amazing." Right. So, that worked yesterday, but today he may I don't want to read. I don't know. So, but I think I think the more as parents we can do it and let them know, but I also think that our actions matter. And so when they see me doing Sunday planning in a journal, or they see me writing things down when things are maybe in a rut and I want to get out of it, I can go to that journal at the kitchen table, and they see that and those actions, and they see their mom exercising and me exercising, and they see the habits that we try to create. I hope that as they get older in age, like I did, you look back and see the things that your parents did, and they're a lot smarter than we give them credit to be, right?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. I saw this, I think it was research on kids who are told that they're actually smart do worse later on. And that was kind of a wake-up call for me to try not to say, "Oh, you are so smart," or "you are," because I think it creates this pressure for them. And so I love that you said, you like to compliment their effort and their hard work. So, I think that that's important to shift the conversation from, yes, you worked so hard on this, and that's what life is all about, right? It's going to be the consistency of showing up even when shit gets hard.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's the hard work versus, I think, sometimes, I know my parents used to call me smart. And I honestly do believe that was not the best thing for me, because then if I didn't do well, I was like, "Oh no, I guess I'm not smart," because they said I was smart, but I got a B.
Right.
So it does create this really high pressure sort of thinking of, if I'm not perfect, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, is, it's funny because in school, if my parents were ever to listen to this, they would know that, when we got our report cards was the toughest day of my life, right? It's always, I was never the greatest student in the world. And it wasn't because I wasn't smart. It's because I just didn't put in the effort. I didn't apply myself, because in my mind, I thought I'm just going to go be this business person and I'm going to go be successful. And I knew education was important. So even if a teacher heard this, they'd be like, "Man, Brett was a terrible student," potentially. I don't know. But at the same time, I also had a candy business, and I was selling candy out of my backpack, and, I was like this entrepreneurial person. And so I think as parents, we have to give grace to our kids in certain times, because we don't know what the future holds. But again, if we can keep showing them the things that we do that help, maybe one day they're going to wake up and be okay with that. And so, while the grades may not be exactly where they wanted to be, they were good enough, right? B's and C's. I could have got A's, but I didn't. And so those B's and C's, but they've worked. But I also learned a lot of other things along the way as well, which I think is important.
Yeah, it is crazy how much even the school system has shifted from just looking at grades, and then also being able to appreciate kids' talents, because we all have different talents and skills. And I don't think that was, I grew up in Germany. It was more like, it's wrong or it's right. There's no gray area.
Yeah.
You're either good at math or bad at math, and that's it. You're in this bucket now. And so I love that. We're in Kirkwood, and the schools here are great at that. They're free range. If you have this interest, then go here. And that doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. It's just that you have a different intelligence. And so we see this a lot today. And at Glow, we really try to support people in finding their talents so that they can be their best selves in workplaces, because I think there's still that kind of culture a lot of times where people are like, if you can't do this, then you're not a good performer. So we really want to tune into what is it that they are good at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, and it's funny you say that. I sent a text message this morning to my business partner, Tim, and I said to him, something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, hey, what are the 2 to 3 or 4 things I could be doing daily or weekly to enhance our firm, our relationship, right? And it's getting feedback, and it's, people have ideas. If you're open to ideas from the outside, it's going to help you get better. And so I don't ever claim to be perfect or that I've got it all figured out. I want somebody that's really close to me that I trust and I respect, that's going to absolutely give me the feedback that I need. And that's exactly what he'll do. And he may have already done it already. I don't know. But sometime today, I'll get this message back. And it may be like, yep, check, got it, copy that. Or it's like, man, I didn't think about that. And then it's a phone call of, hey, man, you said this, like, walk me through what that means to you. And then that's going to give me more clarity on everything I need to do to help in a business relationship. So for what that's worth.
Amazing. So yeah, that's like the feedback loops. And so yeah, let's maybe spend some time there, because I have been, and actually in fact sent like 3 different clients, 3 different feedback presentations on how to give feedback to their people. Because one of the things that we're finding, right, is in your story here, you and your business partner probably have a good relationship where you probably, it sounds like, feel safe with him and are able to ask for feedback, because you're like, well, he has my back and I can trust that whatever he tells me is not going to hurt me.
That's right.
Because that's what our body will think, is like, if I get negative feedback, I'm out of the tribe and I'm going to die and I'm not worth anything. And so what I love about your story is like, you guys feel safe with each other. And so you're asking for that feedback. And so one of the things that I do offer for people is to say, like, what are some feedback loops you can create so that you can create that safety within organizations? Yeah. Because feedback is everything. It's where we find our blind spots. It's how we grow. And, because there are things that we don't see, because again, we're in our routine every day. So I love that example of like, so you sent a text message. It's not like an email or anything like that. And how often do you do that?
Not that often. It was just one of those things that I believe in trusting your gut. And it's, at 45, my gut has not, totally taken me down this bad path yet. And so therefore I don't think it will. Right. And so trusting my gut, I'm like, this is it's in my gut. It's on my heart. Like, what can I do to be a better partner? And it doesn't mean that I think I'm doing something terrible, that I'm not a great partner, but I think we can always get better. Right. We got to challenge ourselves, get out of our comfort zones, get out of the status quo, and think about things that I don't know about. And, you hear people do a 360 interview about, you could have 10 of your friends be interviewed about you, right? Well, that may be tough. Yeah. Some things you hear may be tough. But again, if you're doing it with the right people, I heard early on in my career that feedback and accountability without a relationship is harassment, right? So feedback and accountability without a relationship is harassment. And so I believe that. I'm not going to take this as harassment of what he says to me, right? Because there's a relationship. So his feedback or his accountability is not there. No different than my buddies. I needed help in getting in a more weekly motivation to exercise. And for about a year, and now we're getting ready to start it back up because it worked really well. So we stopped doing it, right? But we're getting ready to start it back up. But I did a text message on Mondays and Wednesday nights to 13 guys in my friend group. And it was all around accountability for working out. Yeah. Send a picture at this time. Tell us what you did. It's accountability, right? It's not harassment. It's accountability because there's a relationship there.
I love that so much. It's that safety is that relationship, so that that, again, they have your back and they're not going to do anything that is going to hurt you. And so really finding, for all my leaders out there, as you're thinking about giving feedback, I think that is one of the most important things, is that especially if you're new, if you you have this new team and you see where the gaps are and you're wanting to, like, your instinct is to just run in and go, this is what's wrong, this is what you need to fix, and you don't have that bond yet, that it can go downhill really, really quick, because they might say, oh great, I heard you, and then in their minds they might think, and I'm never talking to you again.
Right.
Because that's what our nervous system does. It feels threatened. Right.
Well, I think it doesn't know the difference. I've seen these studies before. I'm not a doctor by any stretch of the imagination, but our brains don't know the difference between like nervous and anxiousness versus excitement. Right. And so I know for me, as I've learned about anxiety and those things, is to again, have faith, trust your gut, but know that the brain is confused, right? And I'm smart enough to be able to tell my brain, hey, you're confused, that let's focus on the excitement here, not just the anxiousness.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up. I just wrote on my LinkedIn this morning, my son is in a play tomorrow night, his first play, he's in 6th grade, and he walked outside. I was on my porch writing, and he walked out and he said, Mom, I feel like everything is moving really fast. He's like, something is wrong. It was so funny. And I was like, dude, listen, you're just excited about tomorrow. It's just your energy. So we ended up doing this little dance and energy movement technique that I teach my clients. And we did a dance chanting, I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm excited, I'm happy. And he just went wild. Cool. And he was able to integrate that energy. So yes, you're so right. Sometimes we just don't know the difference, and we are not taught what to do with that energy. And energy is like, it floats and swishes and goes through our body, and we're like, it's anxiety. Well, it doesn't have to be. So that's a really good point. Yeah. Well, good. So is there anything else that you would love for my audience to know? Definitely would love for them to know where to find you. Your journal is the bomb, and I think everyone should get that. All of my clients listening right now. But anything else you want to share that we haven't talked about?
No, I'm a big believer in the what we put in our minds. So I do 10 pages every single day. I try to read 10 pages every day, and some days are easy, and some days, like my son, he would read 100 pages, and some days it was painful to get through 10. And so, but what I found is that on average, it allows me to read around 25 books a year. And, for me, I'm sure there's people that read a hell of a lot more than that. But for me as a guy, as I said earlier, I grew up, I didn't like reading. But now it's just a passion because I can read. And it's something I need to put in my mind and grow, and helps me think and helps challenge my own thinking and believe bigger and dream bigger and all those things that I get from the book. So I say read, make sure they journal. And so for me, it's strategic think time. Again, like I said, Wednesdays, 1 to 2:30. Spending time with yourself and thinking about it. What is this client thing we could do better, right? What is this CEO dashboard that I would like to build, and what could be on it to make it this thing, right, that I could look at, and it's got the sizzle for me, and it's got all the information and data I need. And so there's just things that we have in our minds that we need to go do, but until you schedule it, it won't get done. And so you have to schedule and put it on repeat every single week, strategic think time, or STT, 1 to 2:30. It's you, a magic pen, a magic piece of paper, no notifications, no cell phone, no computer, no iPad. It's you, a piece of paper, and a pen. That's it. Right? So get your Siri out, look what it is, write them down, and then put it away and put it in the corner and do that. And if you do that every single week, like I have for over a decade, that's where my best ideas come from. It's where I get through a lot of things, and my best strategies come from. So I would say those things right there.
Yeah, it's like the saying, consistency beats intensity, right? It's like working out. If you go to the gym consistently versus, you're now intensely going for a month, the results are going to be, different in each scenario. So I love that idea of consistency and scheduling it. And one more thing I will say that it really kind of hit home as you're talking is this idea of thinking on purpose. In school, I feel like we've been taught, and I've heard this before, and I don't know where I heard this, but it was like, we were taught what to think, memorize things and the events, but nobody really taught us how to think, right? And we have so many thoughts in a day. So everything you're saying is really hitting home. And I really hope my audience can take away all the things that you've talked about today, because it is really important to sit down strategically and use your prefrontal cortex to say, this is how I want to think about this, and this is what I'm going to do about it.
Yep. Love it.
Yep.
Absolutely
So
right.
Amazing. So where can my audience find you?
Yes,
Online?
I'm on all social media platforms, so you can find me there, Brett Gilliland. I think Instagram might be Brett G Gilliland. So easy to find. Just type in my name. Visionary Wealth Advisors is our website for our firm, and circuitofsuccess.com is the website for the podcast. So we'd love people to check it out. You can also type in my name or Achieving a Future Greater Than Your Past on Amazon and get the journal. And it's 20 years of my career, things that have helped me, all put into one spot for you. And then you don't have to worry about it. It just takes all the thinking and stuff out of it. It's all in one spot. So happy to answer any questions people have on that.
We'll definitely put all that in the show notes. And I encourage everybody to listen to the podcast, especially if you're local. You've had so many great local people on that I think it's so inspiring, because it hits home a little bit more for me to know, like, oh, my son went to Larry Hughes and Larry Hughes is on. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
For anyone who plays basketball around here. All right. Well, I'm going to just...
Awesome. Thanks for having me.